Hello there, and welcome back. Tonight let us travel very slowly through every place in Hollow Knight, Silksong not as a hurried map to be conquered, but as a long, quiet pilgrimage through Farloom. This is a kingdom built upward, a kingdom that begins in moss and bone and heat, then climbs through rain, bells, ruins, polluted waters, golden halls, frozen peaks, old memories, and places so deep that even song begins to feel small. Hornet arrives here as a captive, cut loose from her cage, dropped into a strange land that does not yet belong to her. And from that first breath in the moss, every location becomes a step in her understanding of what Farloom really is. If this kind of tale helps you rest, feel free to like the video, but only if it brings you some peace. And I'd love to know in the comments where you're listening from. It's a real comfort to know who else is out there settling in. Farloom is not only a collection of caverns, it is a wounded country with a shape, a history, and a religious pressure pulling everything toward the citadel at the top. Bugs speak of pilgrimage as if it is the natural order of life. They climb because the kingdom calls them upward. They believe there is reward, healing, holiness, or release waiting above. Yet the higher Hornet climbs, the more the road itself begins to confess. Every town, forest, forge, swamp, prison, vault, and memory holds a different piece of the same truth. Farloom is not simply haunted by silk and song. It has been organised around them. The journey begins in Moss Grotto, at the bottom of Farloom, where Hornet wakes after the fall. It is one of the gentlest places in the kingdom, and that gentleness matters. The caves are green, damp, and alive with a moss rather than metal. Clear water pools beneath low stone. Small creatures move through the growth with a softness that feels almost harmless compared with what waits above. The place gives Hornet enough quiet to stand again, to remember her strength, and to feel that this new land is not entirely hostile, even if it has already taken her captive. Moss Grotto feels like the last breath of a Farloom that might have been kinder. It sits outside much of the citadel's damage, tucked away from the machinery, pollution, and pilgrimage roads that define the rest of the kingdom. The enemies here are not the grim, armoured servants of the higher halls. They are moss-dwelling creatures, small and earthy, part of a simple cave life that seems to have continued under the shadow of history. Hornet's first movements through this place feel less like invasion, and more like waking up inside a forgotten garden under stone. Yet even Moss Grotto carries the kingdom's deeper story. At the top of the area stands the ruined chapel, an abandoned place of worship where the old congregation is gone and only a caretaker remains. Its spiral shapes and moss-covered walls give it the feeling of faith left behind rather than faith destroyed by one sudden blow. The chapel was once part of a spiritual life older than the citadel's rule, and that makes it important. Before the grand golden religion above, Farloom already had prayers, rooms, symbols, and quiet bugs trying to make meaning in the dark. The ruined chapel introduces the idea that worship in Farloom is never simple. It can be comforting, but it can also be a lure. It can preserve a community, or empty one. The chapel maid watches over a building whose people have left, and the moss mother nesting below turns sacred space into living territory. Hornet's fight there is not merely a first test. It is a little picture of the whole kingdom. Old devotion, abandoned rooms, creatures reclaiming what bugs once built, and a path upward that begins only after the quiet has been disturbed. Later, when the deeper act of the story opens, Moss Grotto and the chapel become stranger again. The snail shamans take refuge in a newly opened part of the chapel, and old memory begins to gather around what once looked like a simple starting place. That return changes the feeling of the whole area. Moss Grotto is not only the soft beginning, It is a door folded back into the oldest powers of the world, a place where Hornet can be drawn into songs, hearts, and memories that reach far beyond the moss at her feet. East of Moss Grotto lies Weavenest Atla, one of the first places where Hornet can feel the presence of the weavers in Farloom as architecture rather than rumour. The name itself carries age, and the corridors are built with a precision that feels different from the lowland caves. Heavy silk covers stone. Machinery waits to be powered. Lifts and lamps suggest a nest that once worked with purpose, not merely shelter. The place feels abandoned, but not empty. It feels like the thoughts of its makers are still caught in the thread. Weavenest Atla is important because it quietly connects Hornet's own nature to this foreign kingdom. She is not from Farloom, yet the weavers are part of her blood and history. So when she enters a place like Atla, she's not simply exploring another ruin. She's touching a distant branch of a family story that began long before her arrival. The artificial corridors and mossy lower chambers sit beside each other like two memories sharing one body. The ordered craft of the weavers and the living cave slowly taking it back. The moss-covered side of Weavenest Atla makes the whole place feel porous, as if the boundary between built and natural space is never held completely. Moss Grotto enemies wander inside. Water rests on old floors. Fossil-like textures sit beneath silk mechanisms. There is beauty in that slow takeover, but also sadness, because it suggests that even the weaver's clever work could not preserve itself forever. Farloom keeps swallowing its own past. It does not erase everything at once. It lets roots, moss, silence, and time do the work. Above Moss Grotto is Bone Bottom, the first town Hornet encounters, and one of the most important emotional anchors in the Lower Kingdom. The name sounds grim, but the place is alive with tents, bone fragments, tired pilgrims, a shop, a station, and a wish wall. It is not grand. It is not safe in any perfect sense, but it is inhabited, and that alone gives it warmth. After the green hush below, Bone Bottom feels like the first proof that Farloom is full of ordinary bugs trying to endure a holy road they do not fully understand. Bone Bottom is built around passing through. Pilgrims stop there before the greater climb. Some are eager, some nervous, some devout, some worn down by the simple fact of being small beneath a huge promise. That makes the town feel fragile. It is not a destination so much as a pause before hardship. The tents and bone pieces do not pretend to be luxury. They say that life at the bottom of a holy kingdom is temporary, patched together, dependent on hope, tools, repairs, and the kindness of strangers. The wish wall in Bone Bottom gives the town its quiet heart. Bugs leave needs there, not grand prophecies. Lost fleas must be found. Materials are needed. A bridge could save lives. Garments, flint gems, food, and small repairs become part of the town's survival. Through those wishes, Bone Bottom tells a calmer truth than the Citadel's promises. A kingdom is not sustained by holy speeches alone. It is sustained by hands willing to fix a broken path, gather supplies, and answer the little cries for help that power rarely hears. Peb's shop adds another homely layer to Bone Bottom. In a world full of ancient powers, a shop can feel almost sacred because it is practical. A bug sells what can be sold. Hornet buys what may help. The exchange is simple, and that simplicity becomes a relief. Bone Bottom is full of such ordinary anchors, a bench, a station, a wall of wishes, familiar faces, and small changes after events elsewhere. It is a town that shifts as the journey changes, but its first impression remains that of a low, weary refuge. The Bellway station in Bone Bottom hints at another pattern in Farloom. Travel is possible, but it is always bound to old systems. The Bell Beast becomes part of that movement after Hornet frees and tames it in the Marrow. What seems at first like another obstacle becomes a creature linked to the kingdom's network of passage. In Farloom, transportation is never purely mechanical or purely alive. Bells, beasts, stations, paths and rituals all braid together, making movement feel like a conversation with the land's strange habits. Bonebottom also contains or connects to several smaller places that deepen its mood. Mossholm, the ruined settlement to the northeast, was once a place of rest and healing. Its association with a weaver of healing makes it feel like a memory of mercy. The fact that it has fallen into ruin gives that mercy a sharp edge. A place meant to heal pilgrims now stands as evidence of how even kindness can be absorbed into a failing religious system and left behind when the road changes. Bone Grave, the cemetery beyond the chapel, gives Bone Bottom its shadow. Pilgrims who could not finish the climb are buried there, and the graveyard makes the town's purpose harder to romanticize. Every bug who begins the pilgrimage is not guaranteed a holy reward. Some end as names, shells, or bodies beneath stone. Bonegrave is not loud about this. It simply exists beside the road, letting the dead rest near the living who are still preparing to climb. That closeness between hope and death is one of Farloom's quietest cruelties. The Chapel of the Wanderer set within Bonegrave turns rest into trial. Rosaries lie around like temptation, but traps and combat make the place dangerous. The Wanderer crest waits below after a gauntlet, suggesting that even identities in Farloom are claimed through risk. Each chapel should be a place where the weary are received. Here it asks for movement, skill and survival. It makes the word wanderer feel less romantic and more honest. To wander in Farloom is to keep going through rooms that may not want to let go. From Bonebottom, the road leads into the Marrow, one of the most striking early locations because it makes the kingdom's foundation physical. The Marrow is built from bone and ancient shells, a place where roads crumble over the remains of long-dead bugs. Its name is perfect because it suggests the inside of the body, the hidden support beneath everything else. Farloom rests on old death. Hornet does not learn this through a lecture. She learns it by walking across the bones. The Marrow changes the softness of the opening into something more brittle. Its paths are narrow, its reds and bones more severe, and its creatures use skulls and old shells as protection. This is where the kingdom begins to feel less like a mysterious cave and more like a place constructed from the leftovers of earlier ages. Bonebottom may still have lamps and voices, but the Marrow says that every hopeful town is sitting on a history it cannot quite control. The Bell Beast trapped in silk is one of the Marrow's central images. It is powerful, useful, and bound. Hornet's encounter with it is not only a fight, it is the freeing of movement itself. Once the Bell Beast becomes linked to travel, the Marrow becomes the place where the journey opens wider. That makes the area feel like a hinge between being lost and being able to return. Farloom is still dangerous, but it is no longer only a vertical climb. It begins to become a network. The Marrow's flint beetles and flint gems also connect the lower caves to the economy of heat and industry. Warmth is not only comfort here, it is a resource. Flintstone and flint gems lead toward the deep docks and the citadel's appetite for materials. Even early in the journey, the land hints that what lies above has been drawing value from below. The bones are not just scenery, they are part of a larger pattern of extraction, work, and use. There is a small sadness in the Marrow because it is so useful and so unstable. It connects Bonebottom, Deep Docks, Hunter's March, Bellheart and Shellwood, yet it feels as if it could crack under the weight of all those roads. That is a good image for Farloom itself. Many places depend on foundations no one fully respects. Pilgrims cross them, workers mine them, beasts nest in them. Hornet passes through them. The old shells remain beneath every footstep, quietly carrying a kingdom that has forgotten how much it owes the dead. The deep docks are where Farloom's industrial body begins to roar. Built above and within a lake of lava, they feel nothing like the moss, tents, or bone roads behind Hornet. Platforms hang over heat. Workers wear protective bell-shaped helmets. Flintstone burns. Metal, machinery, and falling rubble give the area a hard rhythm. The deep docks make the Citadel's dependence on labour and material impossible to miss. All that gold and song above requires heat somewhere below. Deep docks is not only hot, it is heavy. The place feels weighted by metal, sweat, and the constant sense that something is being harvested from the volcanic depths. The forge exists to pull rare supplies out of Farloom's lower body and deliver them upward. That makes the area feel like a throat of industry, swallowing danger and breathing out tools, weapons, and fuel for a religious machine. The Citadel may shine, but the deep docks glow with the colour of work that burns. Hornet obtains swift step in the northern reaches of deep docks, and that matters to the mood of the area. The dash is born in a place of heat and urgency. After the slower climb through moss, town and bone, Hornet's movement sharpens here. The whole kingdom begins to ask more from her body. Faster reactions, longer jumps, a clearer sense of risk. Deep docks teaches through pressure. It says that ascent will not be granted by faith. It must be taken through movement. Lace's first duel in deep docks changes the area from industrial hazard into personal confrontation. Lace is graceful, cruel, playful, and precise. Meeting her near the path to far fields makes the forge feel like a stage where two hunters test each other amid heat and metal. This is one of Farloom's cleverest contrasts. A location defined by machinery becomes the place where elegance appears in combat. Lace feels like the kingdom's aristocratic violence stepping out of the smoke. Deep docks also connect downward, toward the abyss, though that descent belongs more fully to the late story. The idea that beneath the forge, beneath the lava, beneath the working heat, there is an even darker depth gives the location an extra tension. The docks are not the bottom, they only feel that way at first. Farloom keeps revealing another underside. Heat gives way to void. Industry gives way to ancient silence. What looked like the kingdom's furnace is also a door. Hunter's March is a different kind of danger. Warmer, darker, and alive with the red shell scar. The march is a set of natural tunnels between the marrow and the upper far fields, but it does not feel like a neutral passage. It belongs to a tribe. Its traps, shrines, stores, and burrowed routes suggest organised territory. Hornet is not merely walking through caves here. She is entering a martial culture that has learned the land hidden inside it and turned the ground itself into an ambush. The red colour of Hunter's March gives the area a strong identity. Red ants, red thorns, red flowers and red hazards make everything feel alert. The visual language is immediate. This is a place of movement, blood and quick decisions. Tiny ants even retrieve bodies and loose objects, making the whole area feel inhabited by a system smaller and busier than Hornet can fully interrupt. The march has its own life, its own cleanup, its own roots beneath the surface. Traps are central to the feeling of Hunter's March. Spikes, sickles, cages, thorns, and sudden attacks make the tunnels feel prepared rather than wild. The scar do not merely occupy the area, they have shaped it into a proving ground. That makes the march an early lesson in Farloom's many societies. The Citadel may dominate the kingdom's religious imagination, but it is not the only power that ever existed here. Tribes, orders, forests, and hidden peoples all left their marks. The Chapel of the Beast. Within Hunter's March adds another religious layer to the area. A chapel inside Ant territory already feels strange, because it blends the language of worship with the ferocity of hunters. Farloom repeatedly places sacred rooms in hostile landscapes, as if faith has seeped into every kind of territory. The result is never simple. A chapel can be peaceful, abandoned, trapped, corrupted, or violent. In Hunter's March, it feels like devotion sharpened into teeth. Farfields opens the space after the tighter early roads. It is known for grassy caverns and strong wind-up drafts, giving it a sense of breath. After lava, bone, and burrows, the fields feel wide, almost liberating. Yet that openness is not empty. The area still holds danger, especially in lower lava pools and difficult passages that require Hornet to learn the currents. Farfields is not a meadow. It is a vertical breath inside a cavern, a place where air itself becomes part of the path. The Drifter's cloak changes Farfields into a lesson in trust. Hornet must let the wind carry her, but not passively. She rides currents, reads space, and turns upward movement into skill. The location feels designed around the idea that ascent sometimes requires surrendering to a force already moving through the world. That is a gentler thought than brute climbing. Farfields teaches that not every height is reached by pushing harder. Some are reached by catching the right air. The seamstress gives Farfields a softer human, or rather bug, texture. Her wish for flexile spines leads to the Drifter's cloak tying a practical ability to a character's craft. This is one of Silksong's strengths. Movement upgrades often feel rooted in local lives rather than floating as abstract rewards. The cloak belongs to the fields, because wind belongs to the fields. The area's identity and Hornet's growing abilities are stitched together, almost literally. Pilgrim's Rest inside Farfields gives the openness a stopping point. A rest area in a windy, grassy region carries a different feeling than Bone Bottom's first shelter. By now, the journey is no longer just beginning, and every pause has more weight. The idea of pilgrims resting on the way up can feel tender, until one remembers how many of them are being drawn toward a promise that may consume them. Farfields lets the road look beautiful while still keeping that unease under the grass. Weaveness Syndril, linked to Farfields, continues the pattern of hidden weaver places tucked into the wider kingdom. Each Weaveness feels like a private chamber of old design, a place where thread, memory and mechanism preserve another fragment of the weaver's story. Syndril belongs to the fields not by matching their openness, but by hiding beneath or beside it. That contrast gives the area depth. Farloom is never only what its surface mood suggests. Every open field may have a nest behind it. Greymoor is one of Farloom's largest and moodiest regions, and it arrives like a change in weather. Rain falls constantly. Caverns spread wide and damp. Towers stand worn down. The colours become subdued, and the journey feels older, colder and more melancholy. Greymoor is not frightening in the same way as a trap tunnel or a forge. Its sadness is slower. It feels like land that has been tending grief for a long time and no longer expects to dry. Old accounts of Greymoor describe a huge area with misted fields, dilapidated towers, crawbugs, nesting threats, and haunted former tenders of the land. That description fits the feeling of the place perfectly. It is agricultural and ruined at once, a wet middle world where care has turned into haunting. The idea of former tenders becoming threats is especially painful. Greymoor was not always just a hostile landscape. It was worked, kept, perhaps loved. The rain falls over the remains of that labour. Greymoor's bodies of water, crawling enemies and dark interiors make it feel like a place where travel can become wandering. The area connects to Farfields, Bellheart, Sinner's Road, Wisp Thicket and Verdania. so it is not merely one region, it is a crossroads soaked in rain. That makes it emotionally important. Hornet passes through Greymoor not as a simple stage between lower and higher places, but as a wide middle of the kingdom where many histories overlap. Halfway Home, one of Greymoor's sub-areas, carries a name that almost hurts. To be halfway home in Farloom is to be suspended between hope and exhaustion. The name suggests comfort, but the wider region remains damp and dangerous. That is how many places in Silksong work. A phrase promises rest while the environment complicates it. Greymoor is full of that tension. It looks like a land that remembers shelter, but can no longer provide it cleanly. Craw Lake expands Greymoor's identity through water and infestation. A lake should be calm, but here it belongs to creatures, cages, and old ruin. The Court of Craws gives the area a strange social feeling, as if even the crawling things of Greymoor have order, hierarchy, and ceremony. Farloom's creatures are rarely just random obstacles. They often imply habits, territories, and communities. Craw Lake turns the dampness of Greymoor into a small kingdom within a kingdom. The Chapel of the Reaper, also tied to Greymoor, darkens the region's religious thread. Reaping suggests harvest, death, and judgment, all fitting a place of fields and rain. As with other chapels, it makes the environment feel layered with belief. Farloom does not separate labour from worship or nature from ritual. The field, the tower, the lake, the chapel, and the grave-like wetness all speak to each other. Greymoor feels like a hymn sung under rain by voices that no longer know why they are singing. Belheart is one of the most memorable towns in Farloom because it is built from bells. Large and small bells shape its architecture, giving the settlement a sound even when it's silent. It neighbours Greymoor and Shelwood, and it is presented as the last friendly stop before the Citadel's final ascent. That position gives it a special tenderness. Bone Bottom is the first town of the low road. Belheart is the town where the climb begins to feel serious. The first visit to Belheart can be deeply unsettling if it is still haunted. Residents hang suspended in silk, buildings are closed, and the town's friendliness is trapped behind a curse. The phrase thread-spun town fits because the place feels woven into stillness. A town is supposed to be movement, doors opening, shops working, bugs talking, bells ringing. Haunted Belheart turns that movement into a pause. It is not destroyed. It is held, and that is almost worse. After Widow is defeated, Belheart opens into something warmer. Shops return. The wish wall appears. The town can breathe again. That transformation makes Belheart one of the clearest examples of restoration in Farloom. Many locations remain broken no matter what Hornet does, but Belheart shows that some places can be released from their suspended suffering. It is not a perfect cure for the kingdom, but it matters. A freed town is a small proof that intervention can still mean something. Belhome within Belheart gives the town a domestic heart. The name itself is soft, joining bell and home as if sound and shelter belong together. In a kingdom obsessed with holy song, Belheart's bells feel more local, more lived in. They are not only instruments of grand ritual, they are walls, rooms and rooftops. The town suggests that sound can organise ordinary life as well as religious power. A bell can call pilgrims upward, but it can also mark a place where tired travellers sleep. Shelwood lies beside Belheart and feels lush in a more dangerous way than Moss Grotto. It is a subterranean forest full of roots, bramble, ponds, flowers, and creatures that imitate the environment. Its greenery is not the safe beginning of the story. It is mature, tangled, deceptive, and sometimes predatory. The white flowers that help Hornet navigate can be mimicked by hostile life. That detail gives Shelwood its personality. beauty is useful, but it must be read carefully. Shellwood Pond, the lower portion of the area, stretches across much of the woods with shallow water. Water changes how a forest feels underground. It softens the light, reflects movement, and makes danger seem quieter before it strikes. The pond gives Shellwood a still surface, beneath all the vertical platforming and thorny growth. It also helps distinguish Shellwood from the mossy lowlands. Moss Grotto is green in a sheltered way. Shellwood is green as a living maze. The eastern side of Shellwood becomes more vertical, asking more from Hornet's movement. White flowers allow needle bounces, and the climb through branches and blossoms makes the area feel like a botanical test. This is a good place to feel how Silksong treats locations as movement languages. Deep Docks teaches through heat and dash. Farfields teaches through wind. Shellwood teaches through bounce, mimicry, and the difference between a flower that helps and a flower that harms. The wood wasps and polyp hearts give Shellwood a strange ecological detail. The area is not merely a forest backdrop. It has relationships between creatures, flowers, and wishes. The rite of the polyp connects local biology to local ritual, making the forest feel culturally as well as naturally alive. Farloom's locations often work this way. A plant is not only a platform, it may be food, medicine, offering, hazard, or memory, depending on who is touching it. The Chapel of the Witch, within Shellwood, brings the forest's danger into a spiritual register. A witch chapel in a lush thorned wood feels older than the Citadel's golden order, as if Farloom's faiths grew wild before they were organised into halls and choirs. Shellwood as a whole has that feeling. It is not anti-sacred. It is sacred in a way that resists control. Roots, flowers, ponds and hidden paths seem to practice their own religion quietly. The blasted steps stand at the western edge of Farloom and lead toward the Grand Gate. They feel like the kingdom narrowing into a final approach. Wind and sand batter the ruins. The old construction is being eroded by the wasteland beyond the kingdom's border. After the dampness of Greymoor and the tangled life of Shellwood, the blasted steps feel exposed. The air itself pushes back, as if Farloom is warning that reaching the Citadel is not the same as being welcomed by it. The blasted steps are important because they are the final path of the ordinary pilgrimage. Pilgrims have climbed through heat, fields, moors, towns and forests to arrive at these ruined stairs beneath the Citadel. The setting turns faith into platforming and judgment. Strong winds reduce the ease of gliding. Hanging bells must be struck and bounced from. Sand carvers hide in the floors. The path is not just difficult. It feels designed to test whether devotion can survive exhaustion. Judges guard the blasted steps and the route into the Citadel, turning the climb into a moral examination. In Farloom, sin is not merely private guilt. It becomes architecture, law, punishment, and exclusion. The idea that pilgrims judged sinful can be killed before the gate reveals the cruelty behind the holy promise. The Citadel calls bugs upward, but it also decides who is worthy, and worthiness in such a system is never innocent. The blasted steps also connect to the sands of Karak, reminding us that Farloom's western edge is more than a final staircase. It borders older histories and lost powers. The wind and sand are not empty atmosphere. They are the breath of a desert past, scraping at the kingdom's official road. The Citadel may claim to be the centre of everything, but even here, right beneath its gate, another older story presses in from the side. The Grand Gate is small compared with the regions before it, but symbolically it is enormous. It is the main entrance to the Citadel, guarded by the Last Judge, and it gathers the entire pilgrimage into one threshold. All the low roads, shrines, bells, wishes, fights, and climbs narrow into this gilded ruin. The gate promises arrival, but when Hornet reaches it, the place is decayed. It does not feel like paradise opening. It feels like a holy machine that has been left to rust while still demanding obedience. The mechanics of the Grand Gate, with scales, bridges and broken lifts, make it feel like an old system still barely functioning. The gate once sorted pilgrims upward into the choral chambers or downward into the underworks. That division is chilling. Two bugs could reach the same holy entrance and receive very different futures, song above, labour below. The Grand Gate is therefore not only a door, it is a sorting device, a place where the Citadel translates faith into social order. The last judge gives the Grand Gate a final face of authority. The root has already been punishing, but the judge makes the punishment personal. The gate cannot be opened by desire alone. It requires bells, attunement, and confrontation. Farlum's religion is full of beautiful sound, yet that sound is guarded by violence. The Grand Gate holds both at once, music as key, judgment as lock, and Hornet standing between them with a needle. Inside the Citadel, the choral chambers form the main body of the Golden City. They are silk-lined halls, gilded corridors, and vertical rooms full of bells and platforms. Yet they are also broken, haunted, and inhabited by members of the choir who have fallen under Grandmother Silk's influence. This is where the kingdom's promise begins to curdle. From outside, the Citadel is shining. Inside, it is ornate and sick, holy and decayed in the same breath. The choral chambers mark the beginning of Act 2, which feels right because entering them changes the scale of the story. The journey is no longer only about reaching the holy place. Hornet is now inside the thing that has shaped the entire kingdom. The lower regions spoke about the Citadel from a distance, through labour, pollution, longing and fear. The choral chambers are the first long look at the Golden Heart, and the heart is not healthy. The choir gives the choral chambers their tragic identity. These were bugs of devotion, music and ritual, now reanimated or haunted by the very power their songs helped preserve. The halls ask a quiet question. What happens when worship continues after understanding is gone? The members of the choir still belong to song, but the song no longer seems liberating. It has become motion without rest, prayer without safety, beauty without mercy. The grand bellway within the choral chambers gives the Citadel's transportation a grander form. Bells and movement continue to be linked, but here the scale is more imperial. Farlum's travel systems feel like the veins of a religious body. The bellways, lifts, ventrica, and mechanical routes all suggest that the Citadel did not merely inspire pilgrimage, it managed passage. It shaped how bugs moved, where they stopped, and what they believed movement meant. Songclave, another sub-area of the choral chambers, offers a more communal side of the Citadel. A name like Songclave suggests gathering, voices and shared ritual. Yet, in the haunted context of the city, even gathering becomes uneasy. The Citadel's social spaces do not feel entirely safe, because togetherness has been used as a tool of control. Choirs can comfort, but they can also drown out individual fear. The Songclave sits inside that tension. The Citadel spa, reached within the wider choral chambers network, is almost unsettling because it sounds like luxury in a kingdom full of exhaustion. A spa near the Holy City suggests that the upper world had places of rest, healing and refinement, while workers below paid to sit on benches and confess to machines that demanded more labour. That contrast is quietly brutal. Farlum's geography is also a class structure. Comfort rises upward. The underworks reveal what happened to many pilgrims after the Grand Gate. Instead of joining the shining halls, they were sent downward to maintain the Citadel's machinery. the area is dreary, smoky, and dangerous, full of exposed gears, lava, and exploited labour. The workers believe enough service may one day lift them into the holy place above. That belief makes the underworks one of the saddest areas in Farloom, because hope there has been turned into a tool. The paid benches in the underworks say more than any speech could. Rest itself has a cost. A worker who needs relief must pay for it, while the machinery continues around them. The confessional that automatically declares guilt and demands more work makes the system almost grotesque. The underworks are not merely a factory, they are a spiritual factory, turning exhaustion into penance, and penance into continued labour. It is faith weaponized against the tired. The cauldron inside the underworks deepens the area's furnace-like identity. It suggests heat, melting, and transformation, the lower process by which raw material becomes useful to the citadel. In the wider map, the underwork sits beneath the golden halls like a hidden stomach. It consumes labour, fuel, and bodies so that the city above can keep singing. The location is ugly in exactly the way it needs to be. It shows the cost of beauty. The chapel of the architect in the underworks gives machinery its own sacred room. Architects were not only builders, they were part of the citadel's upper structure, tasked with creating and maintaining the mechanisms that sustained the kingdom's voice. A chapel dedicated to that role makes perfect sense in Farloom. Here, engineering and worship are never far apart. Gears can become liturgy. Maintenance can become prayer. A machine can be treated like a shrine if power needs it to be. Whitewood is the citadel's medical ward, though calling it medical does not make it comforting. The area is dark, webbed with silk and filled with bottles, flasks, stretchers, wheelchairs and sharp glass-like hazards. It feels clinical in the most unsettling way, as if healing and experimentation have become difficult to separate. The White Ward reveals that the Citadel did not only govern faith, labour, and song, it also altered bodies. The machines in White Ward that instill bugs with thread are some of the most disturbing implications in Farloom. Extending life through silk sounds almost miraculous until the room itself shows the cost. The ward is not warm, it is full of instruments, husks, and hidden violence. This area makes the phrase holy healing feel dangerous. In the Citadel, to be healed may mean to be bound more deeply to the power that already controls the kingdom. The White Key and Surgeon's Key reinforce the feeling of restricted knowledge. Medical rooms, operating theatres, disposal pits, and locked routes turn the area into a place of secrets. Hornet must descend into it, unlock it, and fight what has been hidden below. The disposal pit is especially telling. Every institution that claims purity has somewhere to put what it cannot explain. Whitewood's whiteness is not innocence. It is a surface over darker work. The unravelled, tied to the depth of Whitewood, gives the area a name for what happens when bodies and thread are pushed too far. To unravel is to lose form, to come apart strand by strand. That word belongs perfectly in a kingdom of silk. The Whitewood shows that the Citadel's obsession with thread did not remain symbolic. It entered flesh, it stretched life, controlled bodies, and left broken things beneath the ward. High halls sit above the choral chambers, where conductors and high-ranking choir members once lived. The area is wide and elevated, filled with water, fountains, streams, rings, and moving mechanisms. After the heavy underworks and the dark Whitewood, high halls feel almost elegant. Yet that elegance is uncomfortable because it belongs to the upper caste. The air is cleaner, the rooms are broader, the suffering below has helped support this height. The water in high halls is important. In lower places like Bylewater or Sinner's Road, water is polluted, tainted, or crawling with filth. Here, water appears in fountains and streams, part of a refined environment. The contrast is not subtle, but it does not need to be. Farlum's map makes inequality visible through atmosphere. What flows clean above becomes waste below. High halls are beautiful, partly because other places have been made ugly for them. The rosary bank in high halls gives the citadel's devotion an economic shape. Rosaries are not only symbols of faith, they are currency, reward, offering and storage. A bank inside the upper halls suggests that piety and wealth have become intertwined. The rosary cannon tool found there even turns stored devotion into force. That is a very Farlum idea. Prayer, money, and violence sharing the same little beads. The forum within high halls gives the area a final public grandeur. It is a place of combat and gathering, with allies able to assist depending on Hornet's path. The word forum suggests discussion or civic life, but in this setting it becomes an arena of survival. High halls once held the ruling voices of the citadel, yet when Hornet reaches them, what remains is not healthy government. It is performance, gauntlet, and the fading authority of Conductor Balador. The Whispering Vaults serve as the citadel's library, or something close to one. They preserve prayers, secrets, history, and old methods of devotion. In a kingdom ruled by song, recorded cylinders become almost sacred artifacts. Knowledge here is not freely offered. It is guarded by vault keepers and tied to melody. The area feels quieter than many other citadel spaces, but the quiet is not peaceful. It is the hush of stored power. Vault Keeper Cardinius and the psalm cylinders give the Whispering Vaults a specific ritual texture. Information is heard, played, repeated. The library is not just shelves and records, it is an acoustic archive. Farlum remembers through sound as much as text or stone. This makes the vaults feel essential to the whole kingdom. If the choral chambers are the singing body, the vaults are the memory that tells the body what to sing. The Vault Keeper's melody, needed as part of the threefold melody, reveals how carefully the citadel divided access. Some knowledge was meant only for certain ranks. A melody could be a key, a prayer, and a secret all at once. That makes the Whispering Vaults a perfect expression of institutional power. They do not merely preserve truth, they decide who is allowed to hear it and under what conditions. The stage inside the Whispering Vaults adds a theatrical layer. A stage in a library-like sacred archive suggests that knowledge in the citadel was also performance. Truth had to be presented, voiced, perhaps dramatized, perhaps controlled. Farlum's rulers understood that sound shapes belief. The vaults whisper, but the stage implies that sometimes whispers become spectacle. Even memory can be arranged before the faithful like a ceremony. The memoriam is one of the strangest areas because it preserves Farlum by containing artificial versions of its environments. Near the top of the citadel, specimens from across the kingdom are kept in recreated biomes. Moss Grotto, Verdania, Sands of Karak, Vault Nest, Shellwood, Farfields, the Marrow and Greymoor all appear there in controlled fragments. The idea is beautiful at first, then unsettling. The citadel collects the world it has damaged. The memoriam's motto-like idea that what is remembered is not lost sounds noble until Hornet sees what kind of remembrance is being practiced. Specimens are caged, biomes are artificial, some creatures are dead or oversized remnants. Verdania's exhibit has corpses where life should be. Preservation becomes a kind of possession. The citadel does not save places by letting them live. It stores pieces of them under glass, stone and gold. The memoriam also reveals the difference between remembering and understanding. A recreated Moss Grotto cannot replace the actual damp cave where Hornet first woke. An artificial Greymoor cannot feel the same as rain over real ruined towers. A preserved specimen cannot restore a lost culture. The area is haunting because it imitates care. It says, "We kept this," but the keeping itself feels like part of the harm. At the top of the memoriam, cages and dead crawbugs make the preservation feel even more tragic. The Citadel tried to make a map of life inside itself, but the map has gone stale. A kingdom cannot be reduced to exhibits without losing the very thing that made it alive. The memoriam is therefore a quiet accusation against Farloom's rulers. They wanted to rule the land, use the land, catalogue the land, and be praised for remembering it after it withered. The cogwork core is the mechanical heart of the Citadel. Huge cogs, rhythmic machinery, moving platforms, and cogwork enemies fill the vertical climb. It was built by the architects, and it gives physical form to the idea that the Citadel is not only a church, it is a machine. Its song is produced, maintained, and repeated through engineered systems. The golden holiness above depends on rotating teeth of metal. The cogwork dancers guarding the core are a perfect introduction to its character. They are elegant machines, deadly and graceful, linked to the Citadel's old artistry. Their dance is not merely decoration, it is defense. In Farloom, beauty often has a blade hidden inside it. The cogwork core extends that idea through the whole area. Timing, rhythm, movement, and danger all become one. The architect's melody found through the core makes machinery musical. The architects did not simply construct walls and gears. They helped build a system capable of sustaining song beyond mortal limits. Massive cylinders, recordings, and mechanical repetition suggest a desire to make devotion eternal. But eternity through machinery is cold. A song that never tires can also become a cage that never opens. In Act 3, the cogwork core's ruin changes its meaning. What was once a controlled mechanical climb becomes broken, forcing Hornet to escape through the damaged remains after the cradle's destruction. The core then feels less like an impressive engine and more like the skeleton of a failed system. Its gears still matter, but the faith they supported has cracked. The machine that once sustained the Citadel's order becomes wreckage Hornet must survive. The cradle rests above the Citadel, the highest peak of Farloom and the place where Grandmother Silk lies. Its name is gentle, almost maternal, but the reality is far more complicated. A cradle can hold a child, soothe a sleeper, or imprison something powerful under the guise of care. In Farloom, the cradle is both crown and cage. The entire kingdom's upward pull leads toward this sleeping centre. Below Grandmother Silk are cages used for Weaver descendants, echoing Hornet's own capture at the beginning. That detail folds the whole journey back on itself. Hornet was brought to Farloom in a cage, then climbed toward the place where cages reveal the kingdom's hidden purpose. The cradle is not simply the top of the map. It is the explanation for why the map has the shape it does. Everything below exists in relation to this sleeping power. The small field of white flowers in the cradle gives the area an eerie stillness. Flowers often signal softness in Silksong, but here they stand near divine captivity, lace, and the final lift toward the top. The beauty feels almost too clean after so much rot, smoke, and rain. It is the kind of beauty that makes a place feel ceremonial rather than safe. The cradle does not need filth to be unsettling. Its purity has teeth. When Act 3 begins and Hornet awakens in the destroyed cradle, the highest point of Farloom becomes a place of escape rather than arrival. She has fewer tools, broken paths, and a changed world below her. That reversal is powerful. The pilgrimage was supposed to end at the top, but the story refuses to let the top be an ending. Once the divine heart is disturbed, Hornet must descend back into the consequences. The nameless town associated with the cradle adds a strange final quiet to the heights. A town without a name suggests loss of identity, or a place outside the normal records of Farloom. At the summit, where one might expect the loudest declaration of power, there is also namelessness. That contrast feels right for Silksong. The closer Hornet comes to the kingdom's centre, the more language begins to fail. Names, songs and prayers all tremble near the truth. Bylewater lies below the citadel's shadow, a swamp-like region darkened by pollution. Its murky green rooms, roots, thorns, traps and tainted waters show the environmental cost of the golden city above. The Stilkin tribe lives here, and their anger makes sense. The citadel has poured waste into their world, forcing them to adapt and become harsher to survive. Bylewater is not just a nasty swamp, it is evidence. The history of Bylewater gives it a tragic before and after. The waters were once clear. The caves were not always foul. Pollution from the citadel transformed the region, and that transformation changed its inhabitants. This matters because it keeps the area from becoming simple gross-out scenery. The swamp is political and historical. Every pool of muck says that the citadel's holiness has an underside, and the underside was dumped on someone else's home. The Stilkin traps make Bylewater feel defensive rather than merely hostile. A people damaged by pollution have made the region dangerous to outsiders. Their anger is not random. It has a target even when Hornet suffers the consequences of moving through it. Bylewater asks for a more complicated kind of attention. The creatures here are not simply ugly enemies in ugly water. They are part of a society shaped by injury. The far eastern end of Bylewater, where the water remains untainted near Pale Lake, gives the area a fragile counter-image. Clean water surviving at the edge makes the corruption elsewhere more visible. It says the swamp did not have to be this way. Somewhere beneath the stink and thorns, another Bylewater is still imaginable. That small clean place carries grief because it is not enough to redeem the whole region, but it remembers what was lost. The exhaust organ, connected through Bylewater's wider story, turns pollution into anatomy. An organ expels waste, breath, vapour, or pressure. Naming a citadel-related structure this way makes the whole kingdom feel like a body with diseased functions. The citadel sings above, works below, digests labour, pumps travel, stores memory, and exhales poison. Bylewater receives that breath. The area is what happens when a holy body has no conscience about where its waste goes. Bylehaven, as a sub-area, suggests settlement within corruption. Bugs do not stop needing homes just because their environment has been poisoned. A haven in Bylewater cannot be purely safe, but the name still matters. Farloom is full of places where life persists under terrible conditions. Bylehaven belongs to that pattern. Even in muck, someone makes shelter. Even under waste, a community finds a way to continue. Weaveness Merglin, hidden within Bylewater's larger region, brings the weaver thread into the swamp's suffering. Each weaveness reframes its surrounding area by adding ancient design and family memory. In Bylewater, that memory sits beside pollution and adaptation. The result is uneasy. Silk, once associated with craft and divine power, appears in a land damaged by the system built to control Silk's source. The weavers are never far from Farloom's wounds. Sinner's Road sits between Greymore and Bylewater, and its name immediately makes movement moral. It was once used to breed and prepare muckroaches as food for the moorbugs below, and now it is polluted, filthy and crowded with roaches and haunted keepers. The area feels like a service corridor for unpleasant necessities. Farloom's respectable spaces depended on places like this, where creatures were caged, cooked, controlled and forgotten. The cages of Sinner's Road are among its strongest images. They were built to hold stubborn muckroaches, but they also make the whole place feel imprisoned. Spikes and swinging hazards hang above tainted water. Keepers who once managed the roaches are now lost to the haunting. The road's filth is not only physical, It is moral. It shows what the kingdom is willing to do with lives it considers low, useful, or dirty. Sinner's Road also deepens Farloom's obsession with guilt. The name implies that those who pass through are sinners, or that the road itself belongs to sin. In either case, the location turns travel into accusation. The Citadel's religion thrives on ideas of penance and worthiness, and Sinner's Road shows the grime beneath those ideas. When everything can be called sin, punishment becomes easy. Even a road can be made to shame the feet that cross it. The mist is connected to Sinner's Road and Bylewater, but it feels more dreamlike and treacherous. It is a foggy, maze-like area blocking the path toward the exhaust organ, filled with traps, corpses, ghostly wraiths, and impossible room arrangements. Its geometry refuses ordinary trust. One doorway may not lead where the mind expects. Rooms can repeat or twist. The mist makes confusion into a location. The wraiths in the mist feel like the air itself has become haunted by silk. The area is implied to be thick with expelled silk from the exhaust organ, and that makes the fog less natural than it first appears. It is residue, breath, spiritual pollution. The mist is not only a maze because it is cloudy, it is a maze because Farloom's systems have made the very atmosphere unreliable. The warning quality of the mist gives it a folk-tale feeling. It feels like the kind of place tired pilgrims would speak about quietly, telling each other not to wander, not to trust the next room, not to follow every exit. Silksong's locations often work best when they feel older than Hornet's arrival. The mist feels like that. It does not need Hornet to be strange. It was strange before she came, and it will remain strange after she leaves. The putrefied ducts continue the story of polluted infrastructure. Connected to Bylewater and the Memoriam, they are dirty tunnels of vile water, aqueducts, muck maggots, and smog from the Citadel. The name sounds diseased, and the area lives up to it. These ducts were likely once clean channels for water, but the Citadel's exhaust and waste turned them foul. The location is a ruined circulatory system, carrying sickness where it once carried life. The aqueducts in the putrefied ducts make the corruption feel especially sad. Aqueducts are built to move water carefully, to connect places, to sustain settlement. Here they are still present, but their purpose has been twisted. The structure remains after the purity is gone. That is one of Farloom's recurring images. Systems continue operating long after the meaning that justified them has decayed. Pale Lake, tied to the putrefied ducts and Bylewater, offers one of the softest contrasts in the polluted East. Its cleaner water feels almost unbelievable after so much muck. The name Pale Lake suggests quiet light, a place where the eye can rest, but it also feels fragile because surrounding corruption makes untouched water seem temporary. In a kingdom like Farloom, purity is not guaranteed by beauty. It must survive pressure from every side. Fleetopia gives the putrefied ducts a strange little burst of comedy and relief. The flea caravan story runs across Farloom, turning lost fleas into a thread of small rescue. A place connected to fleas inside a diseased duct system should sound absurd, yet Silksong often balances sadness with odd warmth. Fleetopia suggests that even in foul places, a tiny travelling community can imagine something cheerful enough to name as a paradise. Wisp Thicket is small but memorable. Hidden near Greymoor and linked toward the underworks, it is a dim forest inhabited by burning bugs who worship wisps and flame. Compared with the grand citadel or wide Greymoor, the thicket feels secretive, almost like a pocket religion tucked away in the dark. Its red tents, hanging bags and dancing lights make it beautiful in a dangerous ritualistic way. The burning bugs give Wisp Thicket its unsettling warmth. Their relationship with flame is worshipful, but also violent, since pilgrims were taken, burned and stored as remains in hanging bags. This is another example of Silksong refusing to make small groups harmless, just because they are outside the citadel. Farloom's minor faiths can be cruel too. The thicket glows, but the glow comes from a practice that should not be mistaken for innocence. The Father of the Flame boss fight at the western side of Wisp Thicket gives the area a local centre of power. Defeating him grants the Wispfire Lantern, tying the area's flame worship to something Hornet can carry away. The trapped bench in a hanging bag is another perfect detail. Even rest must be freed here. The thicket is small, but everything about it says that comfort, warmth and light have been wrapped in danger. Wormways lies in the southwest of Farloom, a nest of tight tunnels filled with burrowing worms, unstable ground and plasmium growths. Its darkness feels more earthy than the citadel's darkness. This is not polished secrecy, it is crawling, sandy and constantly shifting. The groms and gromlings make the area feel alive beneath Hornet's feet, as if the tunnels are never truly still enough to belong to anyone passing through. The wormways are difficult because their life is movement under the surface. Burrowing worms churn rock and bone, and traversal becomes a negotiation with instability. This is a different kind of fear from high platforms or open lava. It is the fear that the ground itself may not hold. Farloom repeatedly makes each location dangerous in its own language. Wormways speaks in tremors, tight passages and sudden emergence. Alchemist Xylitol's lab in the north of the Wormways adds scientific curiosity to the organic danger. Plasmium buds are being studied there, which makes the area feel like a meeting point between strange biology and experimentation. Xylitol belongs to that Silksong tradition of odd characters, making homes in places most travellers would avoid. The presence of a lab does not domesticate wormways. It makes the darkness more interesting. Weaveness Khan, connected to wormways, brings Weaver architecture into a place of burrowing instability. That pairing is evocative. A weaveness implies design, memory and thread, while wormways implies chewing, tunnelling and collapse. Together they suggest that even the weavers place their secrets in harsh terrain. Farloom's old powers did not build only in clean halls. They hid in roots, moss, swamps, void, and worm-ridden stone. The sands of Karak lie at the far western edge of Farloom, a desert of coral and sandstorms. They are not simply another harsh region. They are the remains of a once flourishing land with a clear river tied to the powerful order of Karak and Krusking Khan. That history gives the sands a grand sadness. What Hornet crosses as storm and erosion was once life, rule, water and strength. The platforming identity of the sands of Karak is built around crust tree pearls that create temporary platforms, walls or hazards. This makes the area feel fleeting. The ground appears and disappears. Structures are grown for moments, then gone. That suits a desert made from lost abundance. Hornet moves across brief supports in a place whose old civilization has also vanished into temporary traces. The Coral Tower, tied to the sands, is especially important because it once supplied the river that gave the region life. A tower as source of water feels almost mythic, like architecture acting as spring or heart. When the river is gone and the land becomes sandstorm, the tower becomes a monument to dependence. One structure's failure, loss, or corruption can change an entire region's fate. Farloom keeps showing that places live through systems they may not control. Voltnest adds another ecological and cultural note to Karak's history. The old desert region is not empty even when it seems ruined. Nests, towers, extinct creatures, warriors, and coral remain as layers. The sands of Karak feel like an archaeological location more than a simple desert. Hornet is not only surviving wind and sand. She is moving through the afterimage of one of Farloom's most powerful old orders. The slab is one of Farloom's harshest locations because it presents itself as a holy place of forgiveness while functioning as a prison. Sinners and heretics are sent there to repent, but the lived reality is locked doors, stripped equipment, cold exposure, and neglect. The contradiction is the point. The Citadel can call punishment mercy if it controls the language. The slab shows how easily forgiveness can be turned into captivity. Hornet can be taken to the slab by warden flies, losing her needle, cloak, and equipment. That loss changes the feeling of the whole journey. A character defined by speed, precision, and tools is suddenly reduced to almost nothing. The prison does not only hold a body, it removes identity. The slab is frightening because it understands that punishment is more than walls. It is the theft of agency. The cold outdoor sections of the slab connect it to Mount Fay, making imprisonment and exposure part of the same northern mood. Locked rooms and frost form a double pressure. Inside, control. Outside, nature made lethal. The area is holy only in the most bitter sense. If it was ever meant to cleanse, that purpose has rotted into procedure. Hornet's own line about no evidence of holiness fits the feeling, though the place barely needs words to prove it. The 3 keys within the slab give the prison a contained puzzle logic. It is a place one must understand from the inside in order to escape. That creates a different rhythm than simply defeating a guardian at the door. The slab asks Hornet to recover herself step by step. Each unlocked passage is a small return of power. Escaping it feels like reclaiming motion from a system built to reduce living bugs to errors requiring correction. Mount Fay rises from the slab into cold, vertical challenge. It is icy, nearly enemyless, and focused on platforming rather than combat. That absence of enemies is powerful. The mountain itself becomes the opponent. Frost gathers when Hornet is away from heat sources, and the climb becomes a careful movement between warmth and danger. Mount Fay is not crowded because it does not need to be. The cold is enough. The base scroll warns that seeking communion with the creature atop the mount is a test beyond ordinary settings. That warning gives Mount Fay a spiritual loneliness. Unlike the Citadel's organised religion, this mountain feels like older ordeal. Climb, endure, reach the summit, and accept that insight may be as deadly as ignorance. It is one of Farloom's purest ascent locations because the climb itself is the message. Mount Fay's near vertical cliffs and western slopes give it a physical clarity. Many Silksong areas are layered with society, machinery, and history. Mount Fay strips much of that away. There is cold, height, heat, and Hornet's movement. That simplicity is not emptiness, it is focus. The mountain does not care about pilgrimage systems or citadel ranks. It asks only whether a body can keep moving through ice. Brightveen in the sub-area of Mount Fay suggests a hidden brightness inside the cold. The name feels like warmth or light running through stone, a small countercurrent to the frost. Silksong often places such contrast carefully. Pure cold beside heat sources, prison beside mountain, desert beside lost river, swamp beside clean lake. Brightveen belongs to that pattern. Even the harshest location may contain a narrow line of radiance. Verdania is one of the saddest late locations because it is not merely ruined, it is reduced. Once a lush kingdom of green ruled by the Green Prince and his lover, it now appears as a dim, small corridor of remains. Its story is tied to a bargain with Farloom's ruler, a sacrifice that should have protected it but did not. The result is a place that feels betrayed by history itself. The Green Prince standing above the corpse of a cogwork dancer gives Verdania a personal grief. The area is not abstract lost land lore. It is one survivor, one body, one remembered promise, and one kingdom shrunk into almost nothing. Hornet can access lost Verdania through memory, which makes the ruin hurt more. Seeing or feeling what was once alive makes the present corridor feel even smaller. Lost Verdania is therefore not just a flashback-like space. It is a corrective to the Citadel's version of preservation. The Memoriam kept artificial fragments of Verdania after the environment was deemed exceeded, but the Green Prince's memory holds something warmer and more intimate. Memory here is not a museum, it is mourning. The place survives because love remembers it, not because power catalogued it. Red memory is Hornet's own past made into a location. It is foggy, red, threaded, and dreamlike, filled with heartbeat and whispers. Unlike Farloom's physical regions, it does not belong to the kingdom in the same way. It belongs to Hornet, to Hallowness, to lineage, to childhood, and to the half-weaver identity that makes her both outsider and kin. Entering red memory means the map has turned inward. The first part of red memory leads through weaver spaces, with strands of thread and a deep-webbed red behind everything. It connects Hornet to Weaver's den and the distant village, bringing back the old spider history of Hallownest. In a journey about Farloom's Silk, this matters deeply. Hornet cannot confront Grandmother Silk's kingdom without also touching the thread of her own origin. The memory of Hornet and her mother gives red memory its emotional centre. Hera's presence is not just lore, it is a relationship, a lineage, and a grief. The memory space allows Silksong to place Hornet's family history beside Farloom's divine and political history. Both are made of silk, inheritance, captivity, and sacrifice, but they are not the same. Hornet's past gives her a way to resist being defined by Farloom's silk alone. The Hive and White Palace sections of red memory widen Hornet's identity beyond one place. Vesper, the Hive, the Pale King, pale architecture, honeycomb forms, and webbing all pass through the memory's red atmosphere. Hornet is a crossing point between kingdoms and powers. Red memory makes that visible. She's not merely climbing Farloom as a stranger. She carries other vanished worlds inside her, and those worlds answer back in fragments. The abyss of Farloom waits at the very bottom, accessible in Act 3 through the diving bell beneath the deep docks. It is similar in mood to Hallownest's abyss, but it belongs to this kingdom's own depths. Pitch black, mostly devoid of natural life, filled with hostile forms and void tendrils, it feels like the place beneath all songs. If the Citadel is Farloom's golden voice, the abyss is the silence that voice cannot defeat. The diving bell descent into the abyss gives the place an old exploration horror. Hornet does not simply walk there. She's lowered into a depth that feels unsafe even before she arrives. The bell's damage makes the first descent one way, forcing her to seek another route out. That changes the emotional stakes. The abyss is not a side cave. It is a plunge beyond ordinary return, a place where the map becomes a trap unless Hornet gains new power. The presence of ancient structures and lore tablets in the abyss suggests that void is not merely emptiness. It has been worshipped, feared, addressed, and desired. The tablets speak to a longing for cleansing, silence, and release from suffering. That makes the abyss spiritually complicated. It is terrifying but also strangely attractive to those exhausted by desire and fear. Farloom's holy song is not the only form of transcendence offered in the depths. Weaverness Absalom, hidden in the abyss, is one of the most striking placements of a weaver site. To reach it, Hornet crosses void tendrils and opens the way with the needle-in. There she obtains Silksong, the ability needed to rise out of the abyss and continue the late story. A weaver gift found in the darkness below everything is a beautiful contradiction. Silk, which bound Farloom, also becomes a means of escape. The void entity and the presence connected to the night give the abyss a powerful bridge back to Hollow Knight's earlier world. Silksong is not only another kingdom with another problem, it remembers the depths beneath Hallownest and lets that memory echo under Farloom. The Abyss tells us that beneath different civilizations, different songs, and different gods, there may be a deeper darkness that outlasts them all. Before the whole map settles into one final shape, the smaller resting places deserve their own quiet attention. The Flea Caravan, for example, is not one fixed grand kingdom, but it becomes a moving location in spirit. Mushka and the Lost Fleas turn Farloom into a rescue route, where every dangerous region may hide one more small life waiting to be gathered back into community. The caravan makes the huge kingdom feel kinder at the edges. A lost flea in a tunnel or high ledge is tiny, but bringing it home changes the emotional temperature of the road. The Flea Caravan also changes how distance feels. It is easy to think of Farloom as vertical, always pushing upward toward the citadel, but the fleas make the journey spread sideways. They are scattered through lowlands, midlands, hidden paths and late routes. Searching for them gives the map a soft thread of care that crosses the harsher thread of pilgrimage. The citadel calls bugs upward for its own purposes. The caravan calls lost ones back because they belong somewhere. Chakra's mapping places are another kind of shelter. Her signs, songs and presence turn uncertainty into something bearable. A new area in Farloom is often frightening because its shape is unknown. When Chakra appears, the unknown does not vanish, but it gains a guide. Her work gives each region a second life on paper, and her warrior cartographer energy makes maps feel earned rather than handed down. Farloom becomes less like a trap when its paths can be remembered. The Bellway stations deserve to be felt as locations too, because they are pauses inside the larger climb. Bone Bottom Station, Bellheart Station, and the others make the kingdom's distances breathable. A station is not only a travel node, it is a little promise that return is possible. After the Bell Beast is freed, the bells and roots begin to form a gentler rhythm across Farloom. The road remains dangerous, but it is no longer only forward. It can circle, revisit, and recover. The Ventrica system inside the citadel gives travel a more industrial flavour. Where bellways feel ancient and creature-bound, Ventrica routes feel like pipes, pressure, air, and controlled infrastructure. They fit the Upper Kingdom perfectly. The citadel does not merely build doors, it builds systems that decide how bodies move through space. Riding through such passages gives the city the feeling of a breathing machine, with Hornet carried inside its tubes like a small living spark. The bell shrines across Farloom are not areas in the same way as Greymoor or Deep Docks, but they shape the journey as sacred stopping points. Each bell rung is a small act of attunement, a local sound added to the larger permission needed at the Grand Gate. The shrines make the world feel connected through resonance. A bell in one distant region matters because the citadel's entrance is listening. The kingdom is a map of echoes. Mossholm, the ruined healing settlement near Bone Bottom, is worth lingering in because it shows what mercy looked like before it failed. The Moss Druid's request for berries seems small and almost whimsical, but it belongs to a larger mood of medicine, rest, and hunger. Moss berries grow in the lowlands like little proofs that the earth still offers sweetness. Gathering them does not solve Farloom's curse, yet it brings attention back to taste, nourishment, and the humble work of caring for a body. Mossholm's link to a weaver of healing makes the place feel spiritually tender. A burial spire stands where healing once became reverence, and the settlement's ruins suggest that even sacred care could be absorbed, redirected, or abandoned. The citadel's rise did not only conquer through armies or machinery, it persuaded communities to leave their own forms of safety and turn toward the great climb. Mossholm feels like the kind of place that may have been emptied by hope. Bonegrave adds the counterweight to Mossholm's healing. If Mossholm is where weary bugs sought rest, Bonegrave is where failed journeys ended. A cemetery beside a pilgrim town keeps the entire religious road honest. Some bugs climb, some fall, some are buried before reaching the first great promise. The graveyard does not need spectacle to be devastating. Its quiet is enough. It is one of those places where Farloom stops singing and simply counts the cost. The Chapel of the Wanderer, hidden within Bonegrave, turns the dead road into a test of identity. The Wanderer crest is not received from a cheerful teacher or a shining shrine. It is bound from a corpse after danger. That makes the crest feel like something inherited from all who walked before and did not return. To wander in Farloom is to carry the unfinished steps of others. The chapel makes that idea physical. The survivors' camp in the Marrow gives another face to the early road. The Marrow is mostly bone, danger and crumbling roots, but a camp means someone stopped there and tried to live through it. Camps are small acts of refusal. They say that even in a foundation made from ancient shells, a few bugs can gather around light, supplies or exhaustion and make a brief centre. The survivors' camp is not grand enough to change Farloom, but it changes the feeling of the Marrow by giving it breath. Loddie's presence around the Marrow adds a surprising pocket of play to a grim area. Small games and challenges in a place made of bone remind us that survival is not only solemn. Bugs still compete, laugh, and invent little rituals of skill. That contrast matters. If every location were only tragic, Farloom would flatten into one mood. The Marrow keeps its red flowers, its dangerous beasts, and also its odd moments of life continuing beside the bones. The Forge Daughter in Deep Docks gives the industrial area a local soul. Without her, the docks might feel only like machinery and heat. With her, the forge becomes craft, lineage, and stubborn labour. She's tied to tools, materials, and the heat protection of the magma bell, making her feel like someone who understands the area's danger from the inside. The docks burn, but they also make. That distinction keeps the location from becoming a simple hellscape. The lower alternate passages in Deep Docks make the area feel more layered than a straight road to Lace. Hornet can find ways around, beneath and through the forge, turning the docks into a place with hidden practical knowledge. Workers know such places differently than rulers. A forge always has official routes and service routes, grand entrances and cramped maintenance ways. Deep Docks feels true because its structure suggests use, not only spectacle. In Hunter's March, the tiny ants that carry away loose shells and fallen scar bodies give the region a wonderful unease. They are not bosses, rulers, or quest givers, but they make the area feel like an organism. The march cleans itself. It recycles loss. It tidies violence with insect patience. Hornet may win a fight, but the land has its own workers ready to remove the evidence. That is a quiet, clever way to make a place feel alive. The scar shrines scattered through Hunter's March imply memory and pride. The Red Shell tribe is not just a swarm of enemies appearing from the ground. They have sacred points, supplies, and a sense of territory. The march becomes more interesting when seen as someone else's home. Hornet's path through it may be necessary, but it is still an intrusion. Silksong often gains depth from that feeling. Danger is not always evil. Sometimes it is a place defending its own pattern. The Skull Cave in Farfields offers another excellent image of scale. Sprintmaster Swift living within the skull of a massive creature makes the open grasses feel older and larger. A skull is shelter, landmark, and reminder at once. It suggests that great things died in Farloom before the current troubles, leaving behind architecture by accident. The far fields are windy and spacious, but the skull gives them a deep fossil weight. The race with Sprintmaster Swift also gives Farfields a bright, breathless counterpoint to pilgrimage. Running for challenge is different from climbing for salvation. Swift's presence turns the fields into a place of speed, pride, and playful rivalry rather than only survival. The same wind that carries Hornet upward can also become a racetrack. That is why the region feels open in more than one way. Its space allows fear, freedom, and little bursts of joy. The frontier at the edge of Farfields points toward the limits of Farloom's known routes. A frontier is a boundary, but also an invitation. It suggests that even this huge kingdom is not the entire world, only one immense chamber of it. Hornet's journey is focused on Farloom, yet places like the frontier whisper that maps always end before existence does. Beyond every named area, there is still unknown dark. Craw Lake in Greymoor deserves a slower thought, because it turns rainfall into habitat. Water gathers, creatures breed, courts form, and the region's dampness becomes social. The Court of Craws makes the lake feel almost ceremonial. These are not just wet caves with enemies. They are the remains of a world where creatures have their own strange order beneath the citadel's shadow. Greymoor's rain feeds more than sadness. It feeds systems of life, even when those systems are hostile. Halfway Home may be small, but its name carries one of the kingdom's most aching jokes. Halfway to what? Home for whom? In a pilgrimage kingdom, halfway home might mean halfway to the citadel, or halfway back from hope, or simply not far enough from danger to sleep without worry. The phrase sounds kind, but Farloom rarely lets kindness remain uncomplicated. Halfway Home feels like a rest stop named by someone who needed the name to be true. Bellhart's lower Belvane connection to the Marrow gives the town a hidden underside. The surface identity of Bellhart is bells, shops, welcome, and the end of one stage of pilgrimage. But beneath it, the town is tied to the same bone foundation as the low roads. That matters. No settlement in Farloom floats above history completely. Bellhart may ring higher than Bone Bottom, but it still has roots in the old shells below. Bellholm gives Bellhart its private rooms, the softer life behind the public town. Every settlement needs a face for travellers, and another life for those who actually live there. Bellholm implies that behind the bells and stations are routines, belongings, little fears and domestic corners. When Bellhart is haunted, that domestic life is what gets suspended. When it is freed, that life returns. The restoration feels moving because it is not only shops reopening, it is home becoming possible again. Shelwood's Chapel of the Witch expands the sense that Farloom had many sacred languages before the Citadel gathered power. A witch is not a conductor, architect or vault keeper. The word feels local, old, and maybe feared. Placing that chapel in a forest of mimic flowers and predatory plants makes it feel rooted in natural cunning rather than institutional command. Shelwood's spirituality grows sideways, through bramble and pond, rather than upward through gold. The polyp ritual in Shelwood turns flowers into obligation. Polyp hearts are not just rare items, they are part of a rite, and that means the forest's beauty is folded into belief. This is one of the most interesting things about Farloom's locations. Resources are almost never merely resources. Berries, hearts, rosaries, shells, flint gems, silk, bells, and flowers all become part of systems of need. The land is constantly being asked to provide meaning. The blasted steppes connection to the wasteland gives the area an edge-of-world feeling. Sand blows in from beyond Farloom, wearing down the steps that lead to its holiest gate. That outside pressure is important because the Citadel is not isolated from the world it tries to dominate. Even at the threshold of power, weather from elsewhere intrudes. The road to heaven is being sanded away grain by grain. The sands of Karak make that western pressure ancient. Coral in a desert is a strange image, because coral suggests water, reefs and old life, while sandstorms suggest dryness and loss. The area combines them into a landscape of contradiction. Hornet crosses a desert that remembers being wet. That memory gives the platforms and coral forms a melancholy softness beneath the danger. Karak is not just dead land, it is transformed land. Krus King Khan and the Order of Karak give the sands a political past of their own. Before Grandmother Silk and the Citadel's order, other powers claimed territory, ruled, fought and built. This keeps Farloom from feeling like it began with the current haunting. It is older than its latest disaster. The sands of Karak are proof that kingdoms can fall and still remain present as climate, architecture and names half buried in storm. Vault Nest, within the sands, suggests life adapted to charged hostile space. Even if only glimpsed as a sublocation, its name feels sharp and restless, like insects nesting in energy. The larger desert is built around disappearing supports and wind. A nest inside it implies persistence. Creatures make homes in places that seem impossible from outside. Farloom's minor locations often carry that lesson. Life keeps choosing difficult corners. Coral Tower, by contrast, feels monumental. A tower connected to the lost river gives the sands a vertical memory, almost a counter-citadel. The citadel is the holy peak of the current order, but Coral Tower belongs to a different old greatness. Its presence complicates the entire West. It reminds us that Farloom's climb could have been organised around other centres, other rulers, other waters, other songs. History did not have to take the shape it did. The Grand Bellway in the Choral Chambers is more than a convenient hub. It is a grand public artery inside a city that once believed movement itself could be made holy. Bells call, carry and confirm. Standing in such a place, one can imagine pilgrims arriving breathless from the steps, believing they had reached reward only to be sorted into song or labour. The Bellway's beauty is inseparable from that sorting. Songclave's wish wall and gathering spaces give the citadel a strange echo of Bone Bottom. Both places have wishes, but the feeling is not the same. In Bone Bottom, wishes feel practical and communal, born from need at the bottom of the road. In Songclave, wishes sit inside a grand system that has already failed many who trusted it. The similarity makes the difference sharper. The same structure can feel humble below and institutional above. This citadel spa almost feels like an accidental confession. Clean water, rest and refined care exist within reach of the upper halls, while bile water and the putrefied ducts carry poison below. The spa does not need to announce inequality. It simply stands there, in a kingdom where the lower regions rot from waste. A spa near the holy centre becomes quietly obscene. Comfort is not wrong by itself. Comfort built over suffering is the wound. The Claw Maiden control room in High Halls reveals another side of the Citadel's elegance. Automaton servants or guardians may appear graceful from a distance, but behind them are threads, mechanisms and rooms of control. The Citadel loves beautiful surfaces. It loves dancers, bells, gold and song. But again and again Hornet finds the hidden systems that make those surfaces move. The control room is the truth behind the performance. The rosary bank works the same way with devotion. Rosaries can be prayers, money, loot, offerings and ammunition. Stored in bulk, they lose some of their humble feeling and become wealth. The bank suggests a religion that has counted belief bead by bead. This does not make every pilgrim's faith false. It makes the system around that faith more troubling. Farloom's tragedy is often that sincere devotion has been collected by insincere structures. The operating theatre in Whitewood is one of the most chilling rooms, because the word theatre suggests both surgery and spectacle. Bodies were not only treated there, they were processed under a system that believed silk could extend life and perhaps obedience. The room turns medicine into performance, with instruments, signs, needles, and hidden disposal below. It is the kind of place where a kingdom's fear of death becomes crueler than death itself. The disposal pit beneath Whitewood says what the ward cannot say in public. Every experiment, every medical promise, every extension of life creates failures. Those failures must go somewhere. The pit is where the dream of holy medicine drops what it does not want seen. In a sleepier tale, a hospital might be a place of comfort. In Farloom, comfort and horror share a wall, and the locked sluice knows the way between them. The Forum in High Halls has the feeling of a final public test before the Citadel's higher secrets. Allies may appear there, and that possibility changes the mood. The climb has often been solitary, yet Farloom keeps letting help enter at odd moments. Garmund and Zaza, Chakra, and others can make a dangerous room feel less abandoned. Even inside the ruling heights, companionship can interrupt the Citadel's loneliness. Conductor Ballador's bedchamber beyond the Forum gives the High Halls an exhausted ending. A conductor should be a figure of command, someone who directs sound and order. Finding him diminished, surrounded by empty spools, turns authority into frailty. The threefold melody is not gathered from thriving rulers. It is gathered from remnants. The Citadel's music is inherited from a leadership already hollowed by time. The Whispering Vault's psalm cylinders are fascinating because they make prayer mechanical without making it meaningless. A recorded prayer can preserve a voice after the singer is gone, but it can also become repetition without living faith. The vaults hold that ambiguity. Are the cylinders memory-controlled devotion or evidence? In Farloom, they are all of these at once, which is why the vaults feel quiet but never simple. The sacred cylinder that unlocks the Vault Keeper's melody turns an object into permission. It is not enough to want knowledge. Hornet must bring the proper piece to the proper keeper. The exchange feels ritualistic, but also bureaucratic. This is the Citadel's genius and cruelty. It makes access feel sacred, so exclusion feels natural. The vaults are full of whispers, because some truths were never meant to be spoken plainly. The Memoriam's artificial Verdania biome may be the most painful exhibit because the real Verdania has been reduced so severely. Preserving a dead or dying sample while the living place collapses is a familiar kind of institutional failure. The Citadel can display what it did not protect. It can name, arrange, and remember after the fact. But the Green Prince's grief proves that memory without responsibility is not enough. The Craw aviary at the top of the Memoriam gives the preserve a final bitter note. Cages full of dead craw bugs and the strange presence of a huge flea make the area feel less like a sanctuary and more like a collection that lost control of its purpose. What began as preservation becomes storage. What began as wonder becomes inventory. The Memoriam is beautiful in places, but its beauty has the stillness of a room no creature chose. The nameless town near the cradle is easy to pass over emotionally because the cradle itself dominates attention. But namelessness at the summit is a powerful idea. The climb up Farloom is filled with named places, named orders, named sins, named crests, named roles. Then near the top there is a town without a name. It feels like identity dissolving near the divine machinery, as if the closer one gets to the centre, the less ordinary life can keep its labels. Terminus, as a special space of the cradle, sounds like an ending by name alone. Yet Silksong rarely lets endings stay clean. A terminus can be a final station, a last point of travel, or the place where a route must change form. In the cradle, that word carries the entire pilgrimage's exhaustion. All roads have been pointing upward, but reaching the end of a road does not guarantee peace. Sometimes it only reveals what the road was built to hide. The destroyed cradle route in Act 3 makes the Upper Kingdom feel newly vulnerable. The place that once held the sleeping centre of Farloom is broken, and Hornet must navigate rubble with fewer comforts than before. That reversal matters because it removes the aura of untouchable holiness. The top can collapse, the crown can crack, the highest place in the kingdom can become a ruin like any other. The old memory connected to the snail shamans adds a different kind of location, one that exists through song and ritual rather than ordinary geography. Hornet is brought into memory through the elegy of the deep and the old hearts, making the act of remembering a path one can walk. This is not the same as Red Memory, which belongs to Hornet's personal past. The old memory feels wider, tied to ancient powers and the deep history of Farloom's spiritual struggle. The Everbloom, gained through that deeper memory path, gives the late journey another symbol of life under pressure. A bloom found through old song and sorrow feels very different from a flower used as a platform or a hazard in Shellwood. It is not merely botanical. It is a sign that memory can still produce something living. In a kingdom of cages, preserved specimens, dead exhibits, and failed faith, a bloom carries quiet force. Weaveness Merglin in Bylewater, Weaveness Khan in Wormways, Weaveness Sindril in Far Fields, Atla near Moss Grotto, and Absalom in the Abyss together form a hidden map beneath the visible map. They do not sit in one neat district. They are scattered through moss, wind, worms, swamp, and void. This scattering says something about the weavers themselves. Their influence is everywhere, but rarely on the surface. They left nests like thoughts hidden behind the kingdom's spoken religion. Each weaveness changes the surrounding area by making it feel older and more deliberate. Far Fields becomes more than wind when Sindril waits within it. Wormways becomes more than burrowing when Khan appears in its depths. Bylewater becomes more tragic when Merglin reminds us that ancient craft sits beneath recent pollution. The Abyss becomes more paradoxical when Absalom holds Silksong below void. The weavers are not scenery. They are the buried grammar of Farloom. The 5 chapel names together also form a secret spiritual map. Wanderer, Beast, Reaper, Witch, Architect. These are not identical churches under one clean doctrine. They sound like different fears and needs. Travel, animal power, death, wild magic, construction. Farloom's chapels suggest that before and beneath the Citadel's grand song, devotion had many local faces. Some were gentle, some violent, some ruined, some trapped inside institutions that outlived their original prayers. The Chapel of the Architect is the most Citadel-like of them, because it honours creation, machinery and design. The Chapel of the Witch feels closer to the forest. The Chapel of the Beast belongs naturally near the hunter territory. The Chapel of the Reaper fits rain, harvest and death. The Chapel of the Wanderer sits beside graves and roads. Together they make the map feel spiritually textured. Faith in Farloom is not one colour, even if the Citadel tried to make it sing one note. The quest locations across Farloom add another layer of intimacy. A wishwall in Bone Bottom, another in Bellheart requests in Songclave, errands for the seamstress, meals for the moss druid, lost fleas, rare materials and local troubles all make the kingdom feel inhabited by needs rather than only secrets. A vast map can become cold if it contains only spectacle. Farloom stays warm because someone, somewhere, always needs something small. Those small needs also prevent Hornet's journey from becoming only a mythic ascent. She may be moving toward gods, void, and memory, but she's also collecting berries, helping towns, gathering spines, finding fleas, and answering requests from bugs who do not understand the whole cosmic structure around them. That mixture is where Silksong feels most alive. The divine and the domestic share the same tunnels. After the abyss, Farloom cannot feel the same. The journey has touched bottom as well as top. Hornet has seen the cradle above and the void below, the divine sleeper and the silent depth, the golden cage and the black sea. Every location between them becomes clearer in retrospect. Moss Grotto, Bone Bottom, Deep Docks, Greymoor, Bellheart, Bylewater, the Citadel, and all the hidden nests are not random stops. They are layers between two immense powers. The Citadel as a whole can now be understood as church and cage together. Its bells, choirs, vaults, medical wards, machines, banks, spas, forums, and preserved biomes all serve a system built around controlling Grandmother Silk and governing the kingdom through song. But the system failed. The hauntings spread. Pilgrims kept climbing, workers kept labouring, towns kept hoping. The locations of Silksong are therefore not just places to pass through. They are symptoms of a failed order still moving. The lowlands show what life looks like beneath that order. Moss Grotto keeps softness. Bone Bottom keeps community. The Marrow keeps the ancient dead beneath the road. Deep Docks keeps heat and labour. Hunter's March keeps tribal territory. Far Fields keeps wind and craft. These places are not innocent, but they feel closer to survival than to control. They are where ordinary bugs try to live before the Citadel's shadow fully closes over the climb. The Midlands show mixture and strain. Greymoor reigns over ruined care. Bellheart waits between curse and restoration. Shellwood grows beauty that can ambush. The blasted steps turn faith into erosion and judgment. Sinner's Road, Bylewater, the Mist, and the putrefied ducts show what happens when waste, guilt, and bad air settle below holy walls. Farloom's middle is not one mood. It is a long argument between resilience and rot. The hidden locations show that Farloom has never been one story. Weavenest Atla, Sindril, Khan, Merglin, and Absalom whisper of weavers scattered through different terrains. Wisp Thicket carries flame worship. Vidania remembers a green kingdom betrayed. The sands of Carrick remember an old order, a lost river, and coral under sand. Mount Fay offers cold communion beyond the ordinary pilgrimage. Red memory brings hallowness into Hornet's own heart. Every secret place widens the map's soul. What makes these locations feel so rich is that each one changes the meaning of movement. In Moss Grotto, movement is recovery. In the Marrow, it is crossing old death. In Deep Docks, it is speed under heat. In Far Fields, it is trust in wind. In Greymoor, it is endurance through rain. In Bellheart, it is release. In the blasted steps, it is judgment. In the Citadel, it is entry into the machine. In the abyss, it is descent beyond song. The locations also change the meaning of sound. Bells guide and guard, songs seal and control, vaults whisper, choirs chant. The Needle Inn opens doors and memories, wind howls on the steps, rain softens Greymoor, machinery grinds in the core, lava breathes in Deep Docks, silence gathers in the abyss. Silksong's world is named for sound, and every location has a voice, even when that voice is only water, gear, flame, or a warning carried through fog. Farloom's geography is a moral map. Clean water above and poison below. Golden halls above and paid benches beneath. Preserved biomes near the top and ruined originals across the land. A prison named as forgiveness. A medical ward filled with instruments of control. A town of bells that can be cursed into silence. A chapel at the beginning. A cradle at the summit. And an abyss at the bottom. The kingdom tells on itself through placement. Hornet's role in all these places is unusual because she's neither pilgrim nor ruler. She's captured, then freed. She climbs, but not with the same faith as the bugs around her. She listens, fights, helps, refuses, remembers, and moves with a hunter's clarity through systems that expect devotion. That is why the locations reveal themselves around her so well. She's close enough to Silk to understand its pull, but far enough from Farloom to challenge its lies. By the end, every place in Silksong feels like part of one long ascent and descent. The story begins below in green moss, rises through bone, fire, wind, rain, bells, sand and gold, then breaks open into prison, memory, cold, pollution, void, and the ruined top of the world. The map does not simply get bigger, it gets older. Each location adds another time layer. Ancient shells, former tribes, lost kingdoms, abandoned chapels, dead exhibits, broken machines, sleeping gods, and memories that refuse to stay buried. So when thinking of Moss Grotto, let it be the first breath. When thinking of Bone Bottom, let it be the first lamp. Let the marrow be the old bones under the road. Let deep docks glow beneath the kingdom like a furnace. Let Hunter's March rustle red in its tunnels. Let far fields lift upward on wind. Let Greymore reign forever over its ruined towers. Let Bellheart ring again after silence. Let Shellwood bloom with beauty sharp enough to wound. Let the blasted steps carry sand against the faithful. Let the grand gate wait with its broken gold. Let the choral chambers sing through haunted mouths. Let the underworks turn below with tired hands. Let Whitewood hide its instruments in silk. Let high halls pour clean water above the places made foul. Let the whispering vaults keep their cylinders turning softly in the dark. Let the memoriam remember badly, and by remembering badly reveal what it cannot save. Let the cogwork core climb in circles of metal. Let the cradle hold the sleeping power at the crown. Let Bielwater keep its anger in green pools. Let Sinner's Road confess the filth of the system that named it. Let the mist fold rooms into impossible shapes. Let the putrefied ducks carry the kingdom's sickness. Let Wisp Thicket glow with dangerous little flames. Let wormways tremble under burrowing bodies. Let the sands of Karak whisper of rivers beneath storms. Let the slab stand cold and cruel under the word forgiveness. Let Mount Fay rise into frost where the mountain itself becomes the test. Let Verdania remain as a green grief, small in the present and alive in memory. Let red memory open behind Hornet like a red web of mothers, queens, hives, palaces, and old training. Let the abyss wait beneath everything, quiet and black, where the song cannot pretend it is the deepest thing. And now the journey through Farloom can settle down for the night. Every location has had its turn by the fire. The towns, caves, forests, roads, ducts, towers, prisons, chapels, nests, vaults, peaks, memories, and depths. Hollow Night, Silksong gives each place a different breath, and together they form a kingdom that is beautiful because it is wounded, frightening because it is alive, and unforgettable because every path seems to remember more than it says. So rest now with the map folded softly in the mind. Hornet has climbed from moss to bells, from bells to gold, from gold to silence, from silence back into memory. Farloom is still there in the dark, with rain falling in Greymore, lamps glowing in Bone Bottom, heat rising from deep docks, white flowers trembling in Shellwood, and the last notes of some old song fading through the citadel's broken halls. Let the kingdom grow quiet. Let the road stop asking for another step. Let the night hold every place gently until morning.